Well, this is a voice that local listeners will recognize from the Florida Roundup, which airs on this station every Friday at noon. But this Friday, he brings the Roundup to us, broadcasting the show live from WJCT studios. Joining me to discuss it ahead of his Friday live Roundup is award-winning journalist Tom Hudson. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Ann. Great to be with you. Thanks for the time today.
Oh, it's so nice to have you. So, first of all, what brings you to town?
Well, the WJCT listeners bring us to town and a chance to have lunch with all of your terrific supporters for First Coast Connect and WJCT and the Florida Roundup. You know, this is part of a project that we launched, several months ago to get out of the studio, right, which is a great, comfortable place to do a radio program, as you well know, but to really bring it to the audience and to stimulate conversation, community, and connections. And so Jacksonville is the latest stop for us this Friday.
You do rely so much on, interaction with your audience, whether it's, phone calls, voice memos, emails. It really is a structural part of the Florida Roundup. And you get a lot of calls and comments from people in this area.
We do, very actively engaged. And I have to say that I think you seed the ground for us every Friday, frankly, with your program. And the interaction with the Jacksonville audience is always top notch. And the idea behind the Florida Roundup, gosh, now almost 10 years ago, really was to tie this so diverse and noisy state together so we could hear from one another, hear from folks in the Panhandle and the First Coast, hear from Central Florida, people in South Florida and the Keys on all of these issues and challenges and opportunities and our shared love of this place of Florida and the frustrations that we all share as Floridians as well.
So how has that changed over the years that you've been doing this? You've been a journalist for so long in this area and around the country, but it's a different time now. And doing this kind of broadcast journalism is a different challenge.
Yeah, that is saying a lot in very few words, Ann. No doubt about it. I think some of the challenge that journalism and media generally face is what we're trying to address by bringing the Florida Roundup to live audiences with our partner stations like we're doing this Friday. And the idea is to kind of drop the veil. Let's drop the fourth wall. Let's drop the curtain on what we do. It is not something magical and astrological. This is real people. We're real people who live in the communities that we cover, and we are interested in making those connections, having conversations. Yes, certainly controversy, acknowledging controversy in our differences, but really putting a value on conversation to talk it out toward perhaps some kind of solution or having a shared vision, perhaps, or a shared agreement in at least what the facts are. And so to bring a program like this out of the studio and into the audience, I think is a big step toward trying to address kind of to put it politely, mystique of journalism, that somehow it is just generated beyond the audience and is not generated for and by people who are in our communities in Florida. And that's the idea behind bringing this program to Jacksonville on Friday, for instance.
So the Roundup tries to distill some of the biggest news every week, provide an explainer and then get those voices in on the subject matter. But it is a crazy time for news, I think, is a easy way to put it.
Yeah,
how
it
do
is.
you select the topics each week? How do you distill down what's most important?
So a couple of different things that go into that, Ann, and that's a very common question, right? That I face as a program host. I'm sure you face all the time when folks see you out in public. How do you decide what you're going to talk about? How did you decide that bear hunts was going to be the topic for today's program at the beginning of the program, for instance? Some of it is, watching the news flow, right? What is gaining attention by Floridians? What is some of the biggest news? And I think importantly, really putting the audience at the center of what we do. What are the stories that they are either talking about already or that are likely to have a significant impact in their lives? I'll give you an example. Just a couple of weeks ago, we decided to turn our attention to the possibility of legislators approving a bill this session in Tallahassee to study the elimination of property taxes in the state of Florida. And I got to tell you, the moment we talked about that, moment we just kind of opened up our phone calls, we have 12 phone lines at our studios in Miami. All 12 were taken, and we were getting pinged with, lots and lots of emails. People wanted to talk about it, and there was a lot of passion on both sides that, yes, I feel that Florida property taxes, local property taxes are too high and ought to be, either reduced or eliminated. And a lot of folks also feeling very strongly about paying property taxes and what they go to support: local roads and schools and fire stations and police staffs, for instance. So it's just an indication, Ann, of the passion that Floridians feel. I don't think that we're disengaged, right, from politics and policy. I think it's a matter of presentation and really encouraging a civil debate as opposed to looking for just the points of contention and shining a light on those.
I know you've also done some really good and in-depth reporting on the insurance crisis in
Yeah.
Florida, which
Yep.
is, on the simplest level, I got my bill and it's doubled. It's huge. But there
Oh.
are so many complexities to the problem, to the proposed solutions, to, even the way that these insurance companies are structured financially.
Yeah, as my producers will say, I love to embrace intangible concepts, right? I mean, who says that insurance is a compelling topic to talk about on the radio? But it is here in Florida, right? I mean, it is a full court press when it comes to property insurance because it is such a significant part. It has grown into such a significant part of our household budgets, and obviously protecting, for most people, their largest investment and their largest asset, which is the place that they live. And the inability, some would argue, the unwillingness on the part of state regulators and state legislators to really fully embrace this as a full state challenge. I think the two biggest issues this year for state lawmakers: property insurance again, and the condominium crisis, right, that we're experiencing throughout the state of Florida. And we have not heard a lot about either of those over the past couple of weeks. I mean, here and there, but we haven't seen that front and center in public debates and a lot of public hearings. And the time is ticking down for lawmakers to do some work on this. And I think Floridians are expecting some kind of changes for both the condominium reforms that were put in place after the Surfside tragedy in 2021, as well as continuing to address the challenges that you experiencing personally, Ann, by opening up that envelope when you get that property insurance invoice, and just eye-popping numbers that you see and trying to figure out how you're going to afford it and why those premiums are going up so fast.
Right. And yet, we've heard most talk this legislative session around the subject of immigration.
Yep.
And there are a lot of topics that are dominant in Florida, dominant in the national news because of Florida. How do you help separate the kind of news that is also about Florida, but isn't necessarily the
Yeah.
meat and potatoes news sometimes of like work that the legislative
Yeah.
folks are doing?
Yeah. I like the point that you're leading me to here, Ann, which is I think one of our North Stars for the Florida Roundup is that this is a program that is produced for Floridians by Floridians, right? There's no parachute journalism happening of any of us coming from Washington or New York or anywhere else coming into Florida for a few days or a few hours or a few weeks and pretending we know these issues, right? We are living these issues. You yourself, as a reporter and journalist, you've got that invoice from your home insurance property carrier. So you understand what it means to see those premiums increase exponentially over the course of many years. We've seen the property taxes increase. Some folks who reside in condominiums are experiencing what it means to have their condominium association now have to set aside money for regular maintenance projects as opposed to waive those maintenance fees like they've been able to do for so many years.
Right.
So I think that this goes to the point of the Florida Roundup, which is we're trying to separate the view of Florida from maybe the other 49 states, which is, wow, let's look at this kind of crazy peninsula and panhandle at the corner of the continent. as opposed to those of us who often by choice have chosen, for one reason or another, Ann, have chosen to make our lives here and to make our professional and personal lives here.
For people, I mean, maybe not everybody listening at this hour is able to listen at noon. The idea behind the original concept of the Roundup was sort of a partnership between WLRN in Miami,
Yep.
WUSF in Tampa. And the goal was pretty broad. I mean, we're talking a lot about politics and legislation, but also the environment, culture, the
Yeah.
economy writ
Yeah.
large.
Yeah, WJCT was one of those original founding partners as well. I will take you back to the moment of kind of concept for this. It was, well, first there was an experiment leading up to the 2016 election, and if you remember back in the spring and summer of 2016, right, it was former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and there was so much noise in politics, and particularly in Florida, about this, that we wanted to create a venue, an opportunity to have Floridians hear from policy experts, political experts, and politicians on the issues that mattered to Florida, and public education, protecting the environment. Immigration was one of those. The economy certainly was one. And so that's where the original concept came from. And then on election night, I will share with you, as I'm sure you've spent many election night in newsrooms, as I did in 2016, this particular one, we were with former Senator and former Florida Governor Bob Graham. And once it became clear that Florida had voted for Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump had won that 2016 election, the former governor said to me, "I just wish there were a way where we could talk to one another, where we didn't have to shout across one another, but really talk to one another." And I thought back in the previous 13 weeks of producing what we call Decision Florida, and decided with WJCT and with all of our other partner stations across the state to open up this venue, to have this opportunity for folks in Ocala to talk directly with folks in Homestead about gun control issues, or about school safety, or about transportation challenges in Tampa or in Melbourne. Because we are tied together as Floridians, and we wanted to create that space, create that community in order to do that.
And so, how do you and your team work to distill voices that might be strong or passionate, but maybe not vitriolic? I mean, there's so much conversation that is really embittered and maybe not all that productive.
Yeah. Boy, it can be a challenge, certainly. I think one is the demeanor that we bring to the program each and every week when we're live. How I handle myself, to be perfectly honest. How you handle yourself as a host sets the tone for the guests. We do a lot of research in anticipation of speaking, particularly with those who are holding public office or an accountable role as a regulator, so that we know the facts, and if we think that they're straying away from the facts or not including all of the facts, we can politely, diplomatically, but also responsibly push back and provide all the information for the audience. We're not interested in telling people what to think about something. What we're interested in is, what do they think and why do they think it? Drama is controversy is the source of all good drama, right? Any screenwriter will tell you that. But I firmly believe that civility is where understanding starts, and we can have disagreements as Floridians. We can think of different conclusions, but we can't make up our facts, right? And we ought to be able to have a shared set of facts, even if we draw different conclusions from them.
So, as we said, you're going to be here in town on Friday at WJCT Studios. You're going to be doing a live broadcast of the Florida Roundup. People will arrive at 11:30 and have lunch. Can you give us a little preview of who you might be talking to, or the topics that you're going to tackle?
Well, we're going to dive headlong into one of the most controversial topics that you've already alluded to with this legislative session, which is on the topic of immigration enforcement at the local level. Jacksonville is at the center of this debate now, not only in Florida, but really nationwide, as the Jacksonville Council has passed what all believe to be the first in the nation local criminalization of illegal immigration. Of course, the mayor still has to decide whether or not she's going to sign it or veto it. But we're going to have two council members on, one in support, one in opposition, and really flush out what this ordinance does, right? So we can have this set of facts, what those in support want it to accomplish, and what those in opposition are concerned about. So we're going to have that kind of conversation. We're also going to talk about the explosive growth in St. Johns County. You know, this is just something remarkable in a state that is used to explosive population growth. But what we've seen this decade in St. Johns County is 20% plus growth over the first 4 years of this decade. It far outstrips anything any other county has seen in Florida. And so managing that growth, particularly from the public education side, we're going to have the superintendent on to talk about that. And of course, get into the big changes that have happened led by Florida in public education over the past few years. And then talking about professional women's basketball coming
fun.
to Jacksonville with the Upshot League, but also the possibility of the city making a play for a WNBA expansion team.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we may be hearing more on immigration. We understand that the mayor's going to be speaking on that at 1 o'clock today. So news will be
listening.
moving
Great.
on. Tom
Yeah.
Hudson, it's so nice to talk to you. We have links on our website for people who want to sign up for the Friday event. But thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you.
And thanks for the hospitality. Folks can reach us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thanks, Tom.